It's Patrick Beatty Reviews, the #1 for news. It's Patrick Beatty Reviews, #1 for news. Yeah, tune in, get up. Yeah, what's up?
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Fellow Quisterians, thank you for joining us here at By Grabthar's Hammer. What a panel. 20 years of Galaxy Quest. In 1999, we had a Star Wars film and a Star Trek film in the same year. And the good space movie was called Galaxy Quest. I will be your moderator today. My name is Patrick Gibbs. I am an author, a writer, as well as a film critic for thebeardedtrio.com and Talking Pictures, but you can refer to me as crewman number 6. Let's bring out our panelists. He's an author of books in the legendary Dragonlance series, as well as Dragons of the Confederacy and the Arcane Casebook. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Dan Willis. He's an award-winning filmmaker, father of 2, and a fierce political activist who just this summer testified before the United States Congress. He's got a goatee, and he's my twin, but I'm still the evil one, Paul Gibbs. She's an accomplished writer and editor who can go on and on talking about books for so long without stopping that Green Day wrote a song about her. It's September C. Fox. Give it up for her, she's British. Well, not really, but she digs Harry Potter a lot. And finally, and we have one of my personal heroes, a professor and advocate and social justice warrior princess, Deborah Jensen. And finally, a fellow film critic, a producer, and world-class geek, my fellow Quisterians. Put your hands together for a man who was literally named after both great captains of the Starship Enterprise, Mr. Patrick, William, Beatty. Thank you so much for joining us here for this panel. We're really excited about this. Galaxy Quest, I think, is special to all of us here. And we're trying to have a very interactive panel today where we could really involve everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with the questions because we have a little game that we're going to play at the end that we're going to involve everyone in. So my first question I would like to ask everyone is, do you remember the first time you saw Galaxy Quest and what you felt? Let's start on the end with, to make things less confusing, I am Patrick Prime and he is just Patrick.
Patrick's to your left and Patrick's to your right, everybody. No, like growing up, I, of course, like with my namesake being Patrick Stewart and William Shatner, like I'm in this sphere just by proxy being born, right? So we, when I was young, Galaxy Quest was something that was always on repeat at the house, and it really wasn't until we got the chance to like look back for this panel and really like look and analyze the film that it's one of the best films out there for fandoms, like for people that love what they love and they love hard. This is the film for you because it culminates in everything being resolved by the fans. So that's, yeah, I'll stop.
You just made me feel so old. Because he says that it was on repeat at his house when he was young, and I was a newlywed when it came out, so I couldn't afford to go see it in the theaters, but I worked at Blockbuster, that's right. And so we had you would get copies of the movies before they came out. And sometimes I know, super sexy, like a week ahead, but sometimes you would get them almost a month beforehand, just to get the employees talking so that we would recommend it. And I took the preview trailer tape home, and never brought it back. And then bought my own copy on VHS, of course, and was just in love with it. I watched it over and over again. I thought it was perfection.
Well, I'm going to make you feel both old and young. I'm just loud, so can you hear me okay? Because we're one short of mic here, and I'm loud.
We have
we
one
actually-
here
we
that
shift
actually
Yeah,
makes
we'll shift down. We'll shift down.
Shift
so
it.
Everybody's okay.
I would like to be able to repeat the computer clearly, so I need my own microphone.
It is the one job.
I know. It's stupid, but I'm
Well,
gonna do it.
say, Blockbuster Video. Half the people here don't even know what that is. So now I've made you feel old.
Now that
Yeah.
you all have to sign up for 15 different subscription streaming things, you're gonna miss your Blockbuster. Just saying. You'll want us back.
Now I have seen Galaxy Quest enough times that I do not actually recall when I first saw it, but I did see it when it came out in the theaters. I'm old enough. I grew up largely in the 70s, and I was a teenager in the 80s. And so I watched a lot of the original series, Star Trek, but mostly it was on TV. My parents weren't fans. So I really got into Trek in the Next Generation era. And I saw Galaxy Quest, and I was a big Tim Allen fan, so I was like, I'm going to see this. But I was kind of hopeful that they weren't going to, be too hard on Star Trek, because I love Star Trek. And I went, and now I think it's probably, arguably, the best Star Trek movie ever made. There's some debate that can be had there. There's wiggle room, but what an amazing experience that I had. And like I said, I've enjoyed it enough that I have watched the original film at least once a year. I have watched almost the whole film with the Thermian language track, which is available on the DVD, which is a riot.
I gotta do that.
It's true. If you don't know about that, go to languages and there's Thermian.
Who can do their best Thermian?
You do need to turn it down, because that gets really annoying
loud.
after about an hour. But so yeah, that was my experience with Galaxy Quest, and I so enjoy that it was made by people not who hate Star Trek, but by people who loved it. And so much parody is made by people who just hate things. I hate this, so I'm going to try to take the piss out of them, and they just don't do a good job, because they don't understand it enough.
Yeah, they don't understand it.
I agree. You can't make a good parody of something unless you love it.
Yeah, true. I'm sorry, I got off track. Go ahead.
So I don't remember the exact first time I saw this. I was pretty young. I was in elementary school. My family, I don't know if we saw it in theaters or if we just watched the VHS, but we all loved it. And what's funny is none of us were into Star Trek. And my dad watched it when he was growing up, but none of us watched it religiously. But we all loved this movie. I don't know if anybody out here just loves this movie, even though they're not hugely into Star Trek. But I just think that goes to show that that this is a great movie, even if you haven't watched a lot of Star Trek like me. Yeah. But I feel like this is one of the movies that raised me. And to this day, one of my family mottos is never give up, never surrender. And we still say it to this day. And so, I don't know, I just love this movie. I love that I can be a part of this. And it's just been an ongoing family joke ever since it came out. We've seen it a million times, and it still holds up.
For me, I first saw it the week after Christmas of 1999 in the theaters, and when this movie was first going into development, I was really excited about it. I was reading stories about it. It was going to be directed by the great Harold Ramis, who is probably best known for his role in Ghostbusters, but directed one of my all-time favorite comedies, Groundhog Day, and he was trying to get Alec Baldwin to star in it. And back in those days, as an obsessive religious Star Trek fan, I had kind of
fantasy cast my own idea of something sort of like the J.J. Abrams movie with other actors as the original crew of the Enterprise, and I had pictured Alec Baldwin as Captain Kirk. So this seemed perfect. And then the studio decided they wanted Tim Allen instead of Alec Baldwin. I was not a Tim Allen fan at all. The only thing I'd ever liked him in before that was Toy Story. And then Harold Ramis dropped out because he was not a fan of Tim Allen. And they replaced him with a no-name director named Dean Parasot, who was only known at all for directing a movie called Home Fries with Drew Barrymore, and I lost all interest in this movie. I was not going to see it. And then it opened, and the reviews were way better than I was expecting. And I had a friend who our friendship was largely based on our mutual love for Star Trek, tell me, this movie's great, you have to see it. And I thought, I love her, but she doesn't always have the best taste, I don't know. And then got together with a group of friends who wanted a friend that we often went to see movies with, and we had to pick a movie to see that we could take her kids to see. So Galaxy Quest was the only one that was appropriate to go see that week. We went and saw it together, and I came out of it, and I remember as soon as the credits came up, I turned to the rest of the group and said, I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life. Absolutely. To give you an idea, for me, there was something about that movie specific. Movies are my passion. I love science fiction, but Galaxy Quest symbolizes joy to me, literally. You turn on Galaxy Quest and I am just flooded with a sense of calm and happiness. Quick story, a number of years ago, more than a decade, I was suffering from severe anxiety and panic attacks that would sometimes be over nothing. And I remember calling my mom once and saying, this is getting out of control. And I have to specify that this was just at the point where Paul and I were living together and we were just in the process of converting our collection from DVD to Blu-ray. But I said, Mom, I had an out of control panic attack in the middle of the night last night because I don't own Galaxy Quest on Blu-ray. And she was later talking to Paul, explaining to him where I was at and telling that story to illustrate how unmotivated and wild some of my panic attacks were. And she told him that, and his reaction was, oh my gosh, she's right, we've got to go get Galaxy Quest on Blu-ray. So, what are some of the themes of Galaxy Quest that really resonate with you personally?
Never give up, never surrender. Sorry, I had to throw that one in real quick.
Go ahead, September.
I don't know. I feel like that one's pretty straightforward, but I like how you kind of see it evolve with the Thermians. Like, they really believe this. And I feel like probably all of us, I mean, raise your hand if there's something from a show or a book that you kind of feel like does become your life motto. Like, I mean, I feel that way, yeah. And so it was fun to see, like, people, beings, the Thermians, like, really take that on, and, like, that's part of, like, I guess their culture, you could say. But even when they're at the convention and all the fans, you know. And so, I don't know, I think that's an interesting theme, and I think it's weird because it's kind of meta, you know? Yeah, because it's like you see it play out in the show, but you also see it, like, as a fan of the show, it's also played out into my life, so it's like, it's really framed, but yeah, so I think that's one of the main themes.
Can we pause to look at these people right now? Everybody turn around.
We have some special guests.
Turn around.
Everybody,
Thermians, right here.
Please come to the front of the room.
Please come up to this. Come up front. Come up front. There's seats for all of you.
Yeah.
Please come up front, right here. We have to have our Thermians.
Hold on, we need our Thermians on the front row here.
One of the things that I like about Never Give Up, Never Surrender is that for the Thermians, it is that they are going to get the Galaxy Quest crew. They're going to get the crew and they're going to come and save them. And then it becomes by the end, never give up, never surrender becomes their own motto that they use like for their own behavior, and they become their own like heroes. I really love that about them. For me, I hope you guys like feminist rants, because that's what I bring to every panel. I love the way they use Gwen, Sigourney Weaver's character, to point out all of the like overt sexism and the latent sexism that exists in popular culture and science fiction, really, honestly. I like the Thermians can't figure out how to sit on chairs.
What am sitting on too? That's amazing.
They're still working on that.
They're killing me.
Star Trek, the original Star Trek series was so pioneering in so many ways, and in some ways even pioneering on a feminist level, but you watch it now and there are so many things that just make me cringe.
It's so, like, the objectification of women in these shows, even in the original Star Trek, right? And the subjugation of, like, women are allowed to relay the computer, right? Tell you what the computer says, but that's about it, right? And I found that to be very, I don't know, like, as somebody I was a young adult woman and was just starting to really grapple with the way popular culture represented me and other women. And I thought it was great to see this handled in a humorous way, because it let your guard down. And it sneaks in through the back door when they do that. So I liked that a lot.
For me, one of the themes that really resonates with me is that I spent years as an actor, usually a very dissatisfied actor who didn't love the work I was doing, didn't love the characters I was playing and stuff, and got burned out on it very much. And especially, I had one particular role that I was not proud of at all in playing a goblin in a movie called Troll 2. That's legitimately one of the worst films ever made.
But beloved by so many for that reason.
Exactly. When I discovered, especially
My stalker really loves that movie.
when I actually, decades later, met some Troll 2 fans and saw how much this thing to me was just a stupid, embarrassing thing I had done when I was 14 years old meant to them. And it's that concept of kind of the cynical actor who doesn't feel like they're doing anything meaningful, discovering what this means to the fans.
And that comes.
You're Alan Rickman.
That's what I was about to say. Alan Rickman's character.
Alan Rickman's character, it's a tough choice, but I think that's my favorite Alan Rickman performance.
Can we just,
I love it.
for just a second, let's give a big hand for the great Alan Rickman.
I think the best thing about his character is when he was approached to do this film, he was like, "You want me to do what?" First of all, like, I'm a Shakespearean actor. I'm knighted, and I am now in full garb. Yeah, in full garb. But with him, I think the thing that I read about him being on set and watching everybody kind of just going like improv and like comedy and just trying to bounce off each other, it's amazing to see him in a comedic role, because you don't see that very often with big like Shakespearean actors, right? They're not really able to jump into this and be like full on like, I don't care if this looks dumb, I'm just doing this because it's amazing. And his line.
It was Alan Rickman's idea to have one of the moment when I realized, oh my gosh, this movie is going to be brilliant, is that sequence after the opening when Gwen calls Alexander on the phone and he's still wearing the headpiece on his head, but yet talking about how much he hates all of this. But it was Alan Rickman's idea that you never see him without that on, which was absolutely brilliant.
And I love that kind of love-hate relationship that Alexander has with that character. One of the things I loved most about this movie as a long-time obsessive Star Trek fan was I thought it was wonderful the way they, like you said, that it was made by people who loved Star Trek. That was the most important thing. But I love that they didn't go a full-on Mad Magazine
Yeah.
Yeah.
Captain
Who's they-
Smurf.
Yeah, and you know, you call them William Hatner and Leonard Nimoy. They let them take on their own identities, but the clear influence of their Star Trek counterparts was there, and that Alexander, I think, is a wonderful reflection of that era when Leonard Nimoy wrote a book called I Am Not Spock, and how he then came later to write a book called I Am Spock, where he came to really realize how much that character meant to people.
To me, the thing about this film is that the people involved, and the characters, not the actors, are all, and on all sides of the issue except for the bad guys, all of the characters are deeply broken people.
Yep.
And
All actors are.
what? Well, again, there's some flavor of reality in there, which is where they got a lot of that. But even the Thermians, the leader is not rising to his full potential. And so the big theme in this, as a writer, I love the way the story is constructed. I love there's a thing called a callback, which you use in writing. You put an idea out in the beginning of a story, and you call back to it later, except you shift the meaning. That's what makes Alan Rickman's character so powerful, is the callback. And you all know what I mean when I say the callback, because yeah, that scene is amazing. And I mean that's who Alan Rickman was. Alan Rickman could deliver that kind of scene. I have a hard time picturing anybody else pulling that level of emotion. But that's the thing about this is a comedy, but underneath it, the never give up, never surrender idea is there, and these people all become any Abraham Maslow fans out there, psychology students, become self-actualized.
We've got one.
We got one. Yeah.
Maslow fans.
Hey, Abraham, if you've been in college and you've studied psychology, you have read Abraham Maslow.
I know, but does that make you a fan?
Well, as a writer, Abraham Maslow is important, because if you understand that man's search for meaning stuff, you can write that into your stories. Anyway, sorry, pet peeve. But all these people become self-actualized as they embrace the things that they hated and the things that they were afraid of. And it's interesting, you talk about the sexualization of the character. Have you seen the cut scene, the scene they cut out with Sigourney Weaver? Because that is her self-actualization moment, and they cut it out of the film, which is really unfortunate. It was a little too sexy, I think. You know, she basically beats a bunch of guards by playing on her sexuality, and that's how they all become self-actualized. It's embracing the goofiness, the characters that they hate.
That was cut. They decided they wanted a PG rating, and that scene was a little too sexy.
But there is an R-rated cut out there.
The funny part about that is that that's how. The funny part about cutting it that I like is that all of a sudden you go from one thing to the next, and half of her uniform is gone, and you're like, wait, where did?
What happened there?
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes that's how shows are.
I know, that's what I love about it. Is like,
Right?
you can see that she wears a bra that is coordinated with her uniform, and that is like real dedication to your character.
I remember discussing that with a group of friends, of female friends who had just seen it. And one of them was like, "Did you notice that toward the end, like her uniform is getting torn and like her neckline is going way down, scene by scene?" And I was just, "Oh no, I didn't notice
I would
that."
never have noticed that.
I was
Ever.
not looking. Too quickly to do a callback, I just have to say, on the subject of Tim Allen's performance, he really
Who knew
delivered.
he could be an action star? That was a surprise.
He was
I think,
amazing.
to everybody.
And Harold Ramis even came out and said, "Yeah, he was really good in that part." So I mean, it's still that it's no words for it. He was perfect in that.
Everybody was perfect.
Yeah,
in that. That was
like
perfectly
casting was
cast.
Perfect.
Can we talk about Sam Rockwell yet?
We will as soon as I mention
Guy, you have a last name.
Sam Rockwell as Guy. The red shirt of Galaxy Quest is absolutely amazing. His comedic timing is always on part. Like the part where they're all going down onto the planet, and he's like, "I know that every time we go down, and it's just me, and I'm gonna die, and I don't even have a last name." And they're like, "No, you do have a last name." He's like, "Do I?" Do I?
And then, of course, the great Alan
Before we
Rickman
go any
moment.
further,
Are
I
we there
just want to
yet?
say, oh, yeah, our game that we will be
Oh, yeah, we're gonna
playing
give
is
away
based
so
on
much of that.
quotes.
I gave somebody a hint right there.
Please avoid making too many direct quotes.
Yeah, I should have
sorry.
warned you that I live my life quoting movies.
Yes,
15 years
it's
of
gonna be
tough. We all
Blockbuster will
do
do
too.
that to you.
For me, Sam Rockwell, the thing that that movie made me a Sam Rockwell fan for life, and it was enhanced greatly by the fact that about 2 weeks before then, I had seen another movie he was in that came out at the same time, The Green Mile. If anybody's seen The Green Mile, he plays a character named Wild Bill, a child murderer, the most disgusting, irredeemable, awful villain I'd ever seen in a movie. First time I'd ever heard of him, first time I'd ever seen him, I came out of it thinking, well, there's an actor I will never be able to enjoy in another film for the rest of my life because he conjures the image of this disgusting character. 2 weeks later, I saw him play one of the most lovable characters I'd ever seen in a movie, and I thought, I will be first in line to see any Sam Rockwell movie for the rest of his career.
What I love real quick about his character is he kind of just like starts tagging along, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's not even supposed to really be there, and then he's like, oh, can I get in on this? And like he just ends up like following them, and then of course he wants to go back, and they're like, after all the like how upset you were and you wanted to come and everything. And so I just think that whole like, I guess in writing they call it like character arc, like the way he develops, I think that's really funny how they played with that.
And absolutely, and I have to mention Tony Shalhoub.
Oh, so amazing.
One of the things, does anybody else think it's hilarious that he's Tech Sergeant Chen and he talks about changing his name to Quan and everything? Yet it's Tony Shalhoub. I wonder, was the character written to be Asian and they just decided, let's make the joke that
He was actually originally written to be Asian. He said, I won't play it. I'm not going to play an Asian, but I'll play a guy who was cast as an Asian when he shouldn't have been. And that's,
Well, Tony
how
Shalhoub has
chill he
experience
is.
in that, right? He's spoken about being cast as several different ethnic identities because he's passable, and that's. But I don't buy him as Chen. That one's a little hard for me.
And what I love about his character is that everybody else is just so freaked out by the situation, and he's just, I mean, to me, the moment that defines his character is when they're all beaming over and screaming, and he just comes in, that was a hell of a thing.
it's okay. I put together the quotes. That's not.
But then his character, his whole shtick is that he doesn't know anything, and so he always gets the, what do you guys think? Oh, that's right, you know, and you see him getting by that way up until the moment he has to operate the digital conveyor, and then he freaks out.
Yeah.
And that scene is so great because you start to see who he really is, and that whole back and forth between him and Tim Allen's character just does it. It's just great.
Absolutely. Everyone is given an arc, and that's a pet peeve of mine, that so many movies, we have ensemble casts, but there are characters that just fall by the wayside and don't have any kind of an arc.
And a comedy is really likely to have a lot of characters that are just kind of one-dimensional gags, and nobody in that movie is one-dimensional. There is more to each member of that cast than meets the eye. And
Yeah, who cried when Quillick died? You know, and yet he was on screen for what, 3 minutes? You know.
Well, I think a lot of us probably here kind of relate to him because he was so loyal, you know, and he like took on this culture as like his own guidance in life. So yeah, I don't know. I think for a lot of us, he's probably
He was
relatable.
the super fan.
Yeah.
I was even surprised by like how great the visual effects were. Like watching it again now, seeing how well they still hold up, especially like the prosthetics on Saris. I think like there's one part where it's towards the end, and the team are kind of gaining on him and starting to win, and he turns around and he just lets out this yell, and all of his prosthetics just shoot up and start like playing like in Jurassic Park with that one dinosaur with the little ring. I really loved it, and it still freaked me out like watching it now.
He's scary. Which that brings me to my favorite character, which is Goblin Valley. I love Goblin Valley. I've camped there a bunch with like my Girl Scouts, and every year when I take my Girl Scout troop there, there's at least one parent that's like, I don't know what this is. What is it? And I'm like, have you seen Galaxy Quest? It's where the rock monster lives. You'll be fine. But I like that they, instead of like trying to go with cheap computer generated stuff, which would have looked terrible, right? Go back and watch Titanic. Trust me, it looks terrible. I like that they went somewhere that looked very alien-like, and that I could go play there. Like here in Utah, we should be like, "Ooh, this is a thing we can go run where the crew ran." Don't knock
anything over. Yeah. It was either Tim Allen or Sigourney Weaver was being interviewed, and they talked about going to Goblin Valley, and they're like, "I couldn't believe that a place like that actually existed on Earth."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Well,
Utah.
You're amazing."
Welcome.
Utah, and go to any state. There's always some place you're like, wow, this exists.
Utah is close enough to Earth. We're the alternative to Earth.
Earth 2.0 here.
Finally, on the subject of multi-dimensional characters, this question is for everyone in this room. The moment when Jason Nesmith says, "It's real," and Brandon says, "I knew it!" Raise your hand if that was you.
Waiting for my Hogwarts letter.
Actually, a couple of years ago when LeVar Burton came here, I actually told him that I had to explain to him what an LDS mission farewell was, so I could explain to him. I woke up the morning of my LDS mission farewell. Both of us independently woke up and just had a moment of terror. I forgot to invite Geordie LaForge. Because he was so real to me that I thought of him as a close friend. And I had to take a moment to realize Geordie LaForge is a character on a TV show. I was still half asleep, but...
and how amazing was it that the culmination, the third act of Galaxy Quest, the ship is saved because fans love the show.
Yeah.
And that was what
is amazing.
And that was what Patrick Stewart said was his favorite part of. He had an experience where it was just another Star Trek parody, and he figured it probably wouldn't be respectful, and he wasn't going to see it. And Jonathan Frakes called him and said, "Look, I know we're all tired of these parodies. This is the one you have to see."
He told him to see it on a Saturday night in a full theater.
Oh, I love that.
Justin Long was great in this too, by the way.
Yeah, and that was Justin Long's. It's not only his film performance, I understand, it was his acting debut.
He's so great in it. He's so cute.
Fantastic.
Well, he does great when Nesmith yells at him in the beginning. He looks so crushed. He said such a good performance-wise. It was such a great performance.
It really was. And it was a defining moment for me when I realized I'm starting to get a little bit older, because I'm like, oh, I just want to hug him. He's so cute.
And I don't know if you know this, but the scene right after that where Tim Allen's character goes to the bathroom and he hears the people talking about what a joke he is actually based on a real thing that happened to William Shatner at a convention. So it's interesting. I'm starting to get into territory where I don't know the real specifics. As I seem to remember, that's about the point where Shatner started to become the Shatner we know today, where he's Mr. Fan Guy and he embraces his role of nerd.
Yes,
a paragon, as opposed to before he was hiding from it. So
interesting.
So
thank you.
A question I want to ask our panel is, looking at the premise of Galaxy Quest and our friends right here, the Thermians, and the impact it had on them. If there was one TV series that if we had to have a TV series, the characters from the series save our world and then model our society after the teachings of that TV series, when it go down the line, tell me what TV series you would pick. And I'm saying TV series because I don't want everyone saying the Avengers. No.
I think
TV series?
Yeah.
it might be interesting with Lost, because I mean, Lost already has so many aspects where it's like, I don't know what we're doing here, or why there's a polar bear, or what this means. It'd be kind of interesting to see a group of people try to like make that their culture, like worshiping the polar bear. We don't know necessarily how it got here, but we'll worship them.
And if they had an Armageddon that ended their civilization, it would be so disappointing.
Absolutely.
This is so easy for me. The West Wing.
I knew.
I want the West Wing to be real. I want to be able to believe that everyone who is elected to office and works in government actually has like the best of intentions and is just working toward a goal like that is like righteous, even if they come at it from different angles. And I want everyone, and I want Charlie Young to be the president.
Can I say that when I came up with this question, I knew that was going to be Deborah's answer?
Well, if I had to live in the world of a TV show, I'd want the Brady Bunch, where everything gets solved in half an hour and everybody's a decent human being. You know, that's
Nobody
right.
gets real grass.
Yeah,
and Jan is a bitch.
trade-offs. But yeah, I want to live in a nice world where Lost. Are you serious?
I don't know what's
I don't
happening
even like watching that world, much less living in it.
No judgment.
Much like what we all follow, we don't really know why, but we're just doing.
It's hard for me to pick. I don't know. Maybe I like shows that maybe I wouldn't actually want the world to be like. So I'm just gonna say X-Files, and not because I want like a creepy smoky man in the world, but he probably exists anyway. But because I love Mulder and Scully, and I just want to know that Mulder exists somewhere throwing pencils up at the ceiling, eating sunflower seeds, you know, and I want to know that they're together. But, so I'm gonna say X-Files.
That's beautiful. Well, I already based my life on the teachings of the Dark Knight trilogy, but that doesn't count because those are movies. So I'm going to choose my 3-year-old son. His first obsession in this world was Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and it's been a wonderful way to teach him good things. It's a great influence. I think if we modeled our society on the teachings of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, it would solve all of our problems.
Can I take mine back? Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. More or less, you know, basically, Daniel Tiger is basically Mr. Rogers.
That's what I was thinking. You made me think of that. It's like, man,
The two of
that
them
would be
together,
a good
yes.
world to live in.
So,
Either that or the Bob Ross's world, you know.
There we go.
That'd be a great,
Make a,
that'd be a great
make
place
a
to live.
mistake,
Happy little
just make
trees
it a
everywhere.
tree.
so for me,
You don't make mistakes.
I'm going to go with I really focus partially on the heroes that I believe that could save the world. It's a trio that I just really revere. And their names are Lorelai Gilmore, Rory Gilmore, and Suki St. James. And I believe if we modeled our world after Stars Hollow, a nice, wonderful, peaceful place where that just is a calming, wonderful home, but most importantly, everybody is welcome. You can come in there and be adopted by the town and loved whoever you are. That's the world I want to live in. Daniel Tiger is like that, but with talking owls.
Oh my
so that's why. Thank you very much. We'll collect your buzzers. And let's give it up for Jane, our winner. Here is your NSCA Protector Insignia patch.
To go with your awesome shirt.
That's amazing.
What a shirt.
Like Grandpa's house. What a shirt. All right.
Did you get that here? We might want that.
What? Where can I buy? You gotta walk me to where you bought that later.
Okay. So I started off this panel a little differently from the normal by doing my own introductions of our panelists. So we're just going to end here by going down the line, and I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves the way they would want to be introduced instead of me. The moment where we plug where you can find our...
Next stuff.
Yeah, where you can get our stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at patrickbeattyreviews.com. or just search the name on Google. Something will come up. And yeah, thank you for having me on this, and I appreciate all of you guys. This has been awesome.
Yay! I'm Deborah Jensen. You can find me at Utah State University teaching classes in the Journalism and Communication Department. Here, you can find me at booth 234. I'm on the FanX Community Council, and we want you to get your consent cue card so that you can decide how interactive this event is for you. And finally, I'm on 2 more panels today. I'm interviewing Matthew Lewis at noon. Come see Neville.
I'm Dan Willis. As mentioned earlier, I am a writer. Currently, I'm working on a series called The Arcane Casebook, which is Sam Spade meets Harry Dresden. It's a 1930s noir detective with magic. And you can get those on Amazon. I have them if you want them. And anybody who wants a free prequel book to that series, just come up and get a card from me, and you can download it for free.
Cool.
I run a writing tip blog at writebetterwithaneditor.com, and I'm also on the Neville panel, not the Matthew Lewis panel, but it's all about Neville if you like Harry Potter, and that's at 3.
Yeah.
Again, I'm Paul Gibbs. You can find my movie reviews at thebeardedtrio.com. You can find my films at Pink Wombat Cinema on YouTube. And you can see me this afternoon. I'm moderating the Batman and Animation panel at 1 and at 4 p.m. For those of you who are Star Trek fans, the Waiting for Picard panel at 4. And I am your moderator, Patrick Gibbs. You can find me at thebeardedtrio.com. It's a fan site for George Lucas, John Williams, and Steven Spielberg. You can find me on the television show and the website for Talking Pictures. And mostly you can find me at anywhere interesting that you might come up with on a Friday night, because I am single. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel, and enjoy the rest of your FanX.